Of course I will bet on stay. I turned my gaze to the side. What about you, Nuna? Hyunju Nuna nodded her head. I agree. The risk of leaving is too great. British citizens wouldn't make such a foolish choice. The economic size of the EU is second only to the United States. EU member states have access to this vast single market without any trade barriers. Currently, over half of the UK's imports and exports are with the EU. If they were to leave the EU, they would immediately lose all the benefits and face tariffs and administrative procedures once again. Moreover, London is the hub of the global financial market, acting as a bridge between the US and Europe. But can London maintain this position after leaving the EU? Global financial companies based in London have pledged to move their headquarters to France or Germany if the UK leaves the EU. Golden Gate is also considering transferring its financial hub function currently managed by the UK branch to a German branch in preparation for such a scenario. On the other hand, there is no guarantee that leaving would effectively stop the influx of immigrants and refugees. Most immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe work in the 3D industries, and it is impossible to deport them all. In a situation where Europe as a whole is struggling with refugees, it would not be feasible for the UK alone to pass on the responsibility of refugee intake to other European countries. Moreover, the fate of over 1 million British nationals living as immigrants in other EU member countries would also become a major issue. In short, the benefits of leaving the EU are uncertain while the losses are certain. So logically the UK will stay in the EU. But people do not always act rationally. Sanjiop asked. Brexit is a hot issue in the financial world now, but it's not directly related to our work. Why should we be so interested in it? Hyunju looked at me sharply. What exactly are you trying to do? Now can I talk about it? I spoke about the plan I had been thinking about. I plan to take out a loan using the startup shares held by OTK Company and K Company as collateral. Ellie's eyes widened. A loan? Why? I chuckled and said, I'm going to bet on Brexit. During the Brexit period, the UK experienced several significant terrorist attacks. Here are a few notable incidents. Westminster Bridge attack, March 22, 2017. A terrorist drove a car into pedestrians on Westminster Bridge, killing 4 people and injuring many others before fatally stabbing a police officer outside the Houses of Parliament. Manchester Arena bombing, May 22, 2017. A suicide bomber detonated an explosive device at the end of an Ariana Grande concert, killing 22 people and injuring over 100. London Bridge attack, June 3, 2017. 3 attackers drove a van into pedestrians on London Bridge and then went on a stabbing spree in nearby Borough Market, resulting in 8 deaths and numerous injuries. Finsbury Park attack, June 19, 2017. A man drove a van into a crowd of worshippers near Finsbury Park Mosque, killing 1 person and injuring several others. These attacks had a profound impact on public sentiment and security policies in the UK during the Brexit process. For a better understanding of the European exchange rate mechanism, you can read Golden Spoon Investor on Patreon. It's available for free members. I don't know how this novel is suddenly getting popular. Everyone except Taikyu, who already knew, was surprised. Ellie blinked her eyes and asked, a bet? Which side? I told you. I'm betting on Brexit. Oh so? Ah. Hyunja's expression was one of astonishment. You're betting on the UK leaving the EU? Yes. Sunyeep Sr. exclaimed. Wait, hold on. What does that mean? Isn't the atmosphere almost confirmed for remaining? Confirmed? But they haven't even voted yet. Naturally, everyone had been expecting the UK to remain. In such a situation, I needed evidence to support my argument for leaving, not just to convince others but first and foremost to convince myself. The UK will leave the EU. Ellie seemed puzzled. But experts have a different opinion. There's hardly anyone less reliable than financial experts. If everything they said came true, the whole nation would be sitting pretty. Opinion polls are showing support for remaining. The EU exit supporters are conservatives. Conservatives are reluctant to reveal themselves as such. Haven't you heard of the shy Tory? The term shy Tory refers to the hidden conservative vote in the UK. Remaining gives a positive feeling of accepting other races and supporting the unity of Europe, while leaving gives a negative feeling of being a racial discriminator who drives out immigrants and refugees, hindering European unity. Due to this, when asked by others, many people often say things different from their true feelings or avoid giving a direct answer. Economically, the balance may work out in favor of remaining. However, this is a political issue. From the start, putting the EU's compromise plan to a national referendum was a political move in itself. Politicians in favor of leaving kept silent about the potential repercussions of Brexit, claiming that if the UK exits the EU, a new era will dawn. Their argument is to stop or expel incoming immigrants and refugees, break free from the EU's unnecessary regulations to reclaim British sovereignty and use the large sums previously allocated to the EU for the benefit of the locals. Just listening to their words makes it seem like a bright future lies ahead. One should not easily believe the words of financial experts and politicians. Above all, what voters hold a grudge against is the issue of immigration and refugees. Ellie nodded her head. That's true. After a long time, I visited London and the city's appearance has completely changed. Most cleaners and laborers can't speak proper English and are immigrants from Eastern Europe, causing unease among many. It's the same in our country. It's become common to see Chinese Korean ajumas working in restaurants. In areas like Darumdong, it's hard to tell whether you're among Koreans or Chinese, and places like Ansan with dense industrial zones overflow with laborers from Bangladesh or Uzbekistan. While some advocate for integrating them into our society, others hold negative views, believing that foreigners take away jobs and commit crimes, fueling resentment against them. Moreover, the pride of the British has been significantly hurt. Once Britain was an empire on which the sun never set. Though that era of glory has passed, the prestige enjoyed during the days of the British Empire still fuels the pride of the British. Now, however, the country with the most influence within the EU is Germany. When the UK requested authority to prevent immigrants from flooding the EU executive, the German Chancellor rejected this demand. The freedom of movement between EU member states must be ensured, and if this cannot be accepted, then the UK must leave the EU. Even though compromises were offered on other issues, the UK's pride had already been greatly compromised. The current discussion about refugee quotas is also being carried out largely by Germany, disregarding the wishes of the UK. With dissatisfaction mixed with complaints about being no different from being under German rule and a sigh mixed with self-reflection about how Britain ended up being a country where even the UK can't control borders as they like, it's possible for such sentiments to burst out. To them, the politicians' slogan of leaving the EU and returning to the sovereignty of nation-states inevitably sounds appealing. Considering these points, it's not impossible for the withdrawal advocates to emerge victorious. Hyunju suddenly said as she listened quietly, "There's a point. Nowadays, there's a prevailing atmosphere of extreme right-wing ideology throughout Europe. Still, it must be seen that the scales are tilted towards the Remain camp. This is good for us, isn't it? Using horse racing as an example, a horse that everyone predicts to win usually doesn't have high odds. However, if an unexpected horse wins, the payout could be hundreds of times the bet. This is exactly the current situation. When everyone talks about remaining, I am the only one shouting Brexit at the center of the world. I might be seen as crazy for a while, but the conversation will change when the results come out. I shared the information I had prepared at home. I've outlined the main strategy, so please prepare the detailed tactics individually." Hyunju and Sanjiop couldn't conceal their shock after reading it. Sanjiop in confusion said, "Wait, is this for real? Are you really planning to do this?" "Yes." Hyunju shook her head. "This is too risky. The vote will pass and Brexit will happen. So trust me and follow along. Among numerous arguments, the most certain one is foresight. But that's a secret I can't reveal. The core of my strategy can be summarized into 2 points. First, borrowing as much as possible, and second, leveraging as much as possible. Fortunately, in the foreign exchange market, there is a wonderful derivative called FX margin, foreign exchange margin. By utilizing this, it is possible to bet more than 10 times the capital one holds." Everyone's faces turned pale. Ellie had a puzzled expression. "What's the reason? You've earned plenty of money up to now. Maybe you couldn't have done better than that even if you started over from the beginning. But why are you trying to make such risky investments now?" He was right. For several days I also pondered over that problem. The estimated assets of OTK Company are approximately $10 billion. Including its subsidiary K Company, It is about $11 billion. In Korean won, it's roughly 12 trillion won. 80% of it is my share, so my assets amount to 9.6 trillion won. With this amount, I would rank within the top 10 wealthiest in Korea. As time goes by, companies will continue to grow and my assets will keep increasing. In this situation, is there a need to make unreasonable investments? Can't I just sit still and wait for my assets to grow on their own? However, an opportunity to devour the global financial market was right in front of me. I said to Taekyu, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We can't predict if such a huge opportunity will come within the next few years, and even if it does, there's no guarantee that I can foresee it. Hence, I must not miss this opportunity at any cost. I looked around at everyone and said, if there's a chance to make money, we should make money. Do we need any other reasons? If it were like the L6 situation before, I would have avoided derivative investments. But now the timing is clearly defined until the voting day. If you are confident, you must be prepared and jump in. Just investing and watching from the sidelines doesn't suit my nature. Senior Sanjiop spoke as if he was lamenting. If we fail, everything will go up in smoke. OTK company, K company, they will all disappear into thin air. I asked while looking at Senior Sanjiop. Do you remember the winter 2 years ago? Yeah. Back then both you and I were penniless. Yet in less than 2 years, we've made it to where we are now. Why do you think that was possible? If we hadn't sold the put options during the L6 incident, how many years would it have taken to make 600 billion? If we hadn't earned like that back then, we wouldn't have dared to invest in startups later, and our assets wouldn't have grown to $10 billion. The world has changed rapidly in a year. More opportunities will arise, and to seize them we need more money. If everything goes, we'll just start over from scratch. What's there to worry about? Senior Sanjiop loosened his tight necktie. Then he gulped down the drink in front of him in one go. You're right. There must have been good reasons to be sure about Brexit, and when you're sure, you have to act. Looks like I've gotten a bit complacent from making money all this time. Senior Sanjiop suddenly had the same look in his eyes as when he came looking to hire me in the past. Hyunju sighed and said, the decision has already been made, right? Yes. Then I'll follow the CEO's decision. Taekyu raised his hand. I'm definitely in favor. Ellie shrugged. There's not much I can do to help, but I'll support you nonetheless. Thank you. As the CEO of OTK company, I said, let's try to earn some money from now on. The head of the London Foreign Exchange, Josh Harrington, was monitoring the foreign exchange market when he detected an unusual trend. For the past few days, there has been a continuous influx of pounds being sold. Where on earth are these orders coming from? He wondered. He instructed his chief dealer, David Enoch, to investigate. Take a look and find out, he said. While financial firms do not disclose customer information upon inquiry, closely monitoring the flow of funds can reveal the source of the money. David reported back to Josh, it's OTK Company. What? It was a familiar name. OTK Company first appeared in the financial market in Korea during the L6 explosion incident. Just before Samsung Electronics premium phone, L6 was discontinued due to explosions. A particular company amassed a large amount of Samsung Electronics and Kospi put options. On a day known as Black Friday in the Korean stock market crash, that company made profits exceeding $500 million. With this capital as a foundation about a year ago, it ventured into venture capital, and the value of companies in which it held stakes steadily increased daily. Among those with a strong presence in the financial markets, hardly anyone would be unfamiliar with the name OTK Company. However, recently OTK Company had set its holdings as collateral with financial institutions to obtain loans exceeding $10 billion, causing rumors to spread throughout the financial industry. What were they planning to do with such a huge borrowed sum? Were they pouring it into the foreign exchange market? Exchange rates are closely related to a country's economic strength. The UK plays a key role in the global economy, and the pound was being treated as a reserve currency alongside the euro, yen, and yuan. As a result, it was not to be taken lightly by foreign exchange speculators. Selling off pounds. Does it mean they are predicting a decline in the pound's value? I need to look into this more. A few days later, Josh, who had discovered the truth, was shocked. OTK Company was not just engaging in spot trading but was involved in FX margin trading. They leveraged up to 10 times to turn $10 billion into $100 billion before placing their bets. It was truly a crazy thing to do. If the pound unexpectedly rose by 10%, they would lose all their investment capital. Josh was baffled. What on earth are these geeks thinking? During a similar period, the opposite situation was unfolding at the Tokyo foreign exchange market. While it's said that the market determines exchange rates, there are government entities among the market participants. When the exchange rate rises excessively, the government sells dollars and buys domestic currency, and when it falls excessively, they sell domestic currency and buys dollars to intervene in the market. Managing the yen's value is one of the current government's key policies. Despite the government continuously buying dollars to devalue the yen, the exchange rate was in fact dropping. This was because a specific faction kept selling dollars and buying yen. Who is the buyer? It's OTK Company. While OTK Company was selling pounds on the London foreign exchange market, they were buying yen at the Tokyo foreign exchange market. The implications of this situation were clear. Yamazaki Hitoshi, the head of the Tokyo foreign exchange market, muttered as he saw the increasing buy orders. Could it be betting on Brexit? Foreign exchange, Forex. Margin is a concept used in Forex trading that allows traders to control larger positions with a relatively smaller amount of capital. Here's a breakdown of how it works. Definition. Forex margin is the amount of money required to open and maintain a trading position. It acts as collateral for leveraged trading, enabling traders to increase their exposure to the market. Leverage. When trading on margin, you are essentially borrowing money from your broker to control a larger position than you could with your own capital alone. In Forex, to control $100,000 position, your broker will set aside $1,000 from your account. Your leverage, which is expressed in ratios, is now 100 to 1. Controlling $100,000 to $1,000. The $1,000 deposit is margin. You had to give in order to use leverage. Margin requirement. This is expressed as a percentage of the full trade size. Different brokers have different margin requirements, which can vary based on the currency pair being traded and market conditions. Margin call. If the market moves against your position and your losses approach the amount of margin you have deposited, your broker may issue a margin call. This requires you to either deposit more funds or close out your position to limit the risk. Risks and rewards. While trading on margin can amplify your potential gains, it also increases the risk of significant losses, potentially exceeding your initial investment. The remaining time until the vote is about 2 months. As soon as the company's policy was decided, Hyunju swiftly took action. OTK Company raised money from a financial company by using the shares it held as collateral. If the loan was not repaid by the agreed period, the collateral would automatically transfer. Various financial institutions, including private equity funds, sovereign wealth funds, and investment banks, had been eyeing the shares held by OTK Company for some time. They had received numerous offers to sell. It was a profitable deal with no risks, so people were lining up to lend money everywhere. We borrowed money and entrusted the shares of each company to the highest bidder through an auction process. There is no place where rumors spread as quickly as in the financial market. The fact that OTK Company was borrowing money spread throughout the entire financial industry in an instant. The cash we raised amounted to a total of $10.8 billion. If we couldn't repay the borrowed money on time, all the shares pledged as collateral would be lost, and OTK Company would go bankrupt. Even if Brexit becomes a reality, there would be no collapse in the UK financial market. The pound might only drop by 10 to 20%. Therefore, it is difficult to increase profits through spot investments alone. That's why I considered FX margin trading. It involved leveraging funds tenfold to make bets. There would be high fees and interest to pay until the trades were closed, and huge losses could occur if the predictions went wrong. In gambling, all problems are solved, is a common saying among those who borrow money for gambling, but it's not entirely wrong. Once everything was prepared, I gave the order. Let's begin. OTK Company's target was the foreign exchange markets of the UK and Japan. To understand our strategy, you first need to understand the mechanism of how the foreign exchange market operates. What exactly is the foreign exchange market? I responded simply to Taiku's question. It's literally where you buy and sell money. Money is a means to purchase goods, not a commodity itself. While you can buy a toy with 10,000 won, You can't buy 10,000 won with 10,000 won, right? However, in the foreign exchange market, money is traded as a commodity. You can buy $9 with 10,000 won and then buy 10,000 won with $9. So, how can you make money in the foreign exchange market? The answer is to buy low and sell high. Alternatively, sell high first and then buy low later. When $1 equals 2,001, you sell $1 to buy 2,001, and when $1 equals 1,001, you sell the 2,001 to buy $2. This way you can double your earnings. The reverse is also possible. When $1 equals 1,001, you borrow 1,001 to sell and buy $1. Later, when $1 equals 2,001, you sell the $1 bought earlier to buy 2,001 and repay the 1,001 you borrowed. This way, even after repaying the debt, you will have 1,001 left in your pocket. In this way, in 1992, a certain investor cleaned out the UK foreign exchange market. That investor was none other than George Soros, the operator of Quantum Fund. At that time, the UK adopted the exchange rate mechanism, peg system, to keep the German mark and their currency pound within a certain band. However, when the mark strengthened, the pound also strengthened, and due to high interest rates and a low exchange rate, the UK economy suffered. Exchange rates are closely related to the economy. When the economy struggles, naturally the currency value should drop. However, since it was pegged to the mark, despite the worsening economy, the pound's value remained high, leading to a peculiar situation. Investors, or speculators, didn't miss this opportunity. George Soros, deeming the pound overvalued artificially, launched an attack on the UK foreign exchange market. He borrowed a massive amount of pounds, then sold them in the foreign exchange market to buy dollars. When the pound increased and the dollar decreased in the foreign exchange market, naturally the value of the pound went down and the value of the dollar went up. T/N, supply increases but there's no demand, so the pound value should fall. However, because the pound is linked to the mark, it cannot fall below the band. To defend the value of the pound, the UK government released foreign exchange reserves, selling dollars and buying pounds. Thus, a war broke out between hedge funds selling pounds and the UK government buying pounds. What was the result? The UK got completely wrecked. The first to run out of money was the UK government. When the foreign exchange reserves ran out, they had no choice but to surrender. The UK government abandoned the pegged exchange rate system and gave up defending the exchange rate. As a result, the Bank of England went bankrupt, and the pound plummeted by nearly 30%. George Soros bought the plummeting pound, repaid the pounds lent to the UK, and left the UK market with astronomical profits. There is a saying by Karl Marx: history repeats itself twice, the first as a tragedy, the second as a farce. What do you mean? Similar events occurred later in Asia, 5 years later. In 1997, George Soros targeted Indonesia and Thailand. Ruthless selling by Quantum Fund caused the rupee and baht to collapse, triggering the Asian financial crisis. In this crisis, South Korea also hit the bottom of its foreign exchange reserves and had to urgently borrow dollars from the IMF to avoid default. Through these two events, George Soros gained notoriety as the grave dancer and global speculator, becoming a legend among hedge funds. Our strategy is somewhat similar on a larger scale. However, there is one decisive difference here: the impending international event of the Brexit vote. If the outcome is to remain, the UK government might not need to defend itself by releasing foreign exchange reserves, and the exchange rate will stabilize on its own. Conversely, if the outcome is to leave, it will be difficult to prevent a pound crash no matter what they do. We just have to wait until the vote results are out. There aren't many markets that can digest a sum of money exceeding $100 billion in a short period of time. The foreign exchange market is so massive that it's difficult to compare with the stock market. But when such a large amount of funds converges in one direction, the market prices are bound to fluctuate. Foreign exchange speculation is akin to playing poker with revealed cards from the beginning. Whether attacking or defending, both sides know each other's means and objectives very well. With each side understanding the other's strategy, it becomes a showdown of money being shot like bullets. If there's no more money to pour into the foreign exchange market, hedge funds lose. And if a country runs out of foreign reserves before that, the nation bears the loss. Winning brings astronomical profits, but losing means bankruptcy. Having more allies favors the attacking side. Hence, hedge funds, before attacking the foreign exchange market, publicly criticize the economy and exchange rate issues of the targeted country to gather as much support as possible. Even in 1992, if the Quantum Fund had stood alone against the UK government, the first to raise their hands would have been George Soros. However, many hedge funds sided with George Soros, and the UK government, unable to withstand the barrage of money thrown at them, eventually surrendered. My strategy was completely different in this regard. It's not us but the British citizens with voting rights who can bring down the British government. Therefore, it was crucial to avoid creating the perception that foreign exchange speculative forces were trying to exploit the UK foreign exchange market. So, dividing OTK companies' funds into two parts, we sold pounds on one side and bought yen on the other. If it had been a less traded currency, the exchange rate would have fluctuated immediately. However, since pounds and yen were major currencies, with daily astronomical trading volumes in USD/GBP and USD/JPY, we conducted our trades as quietly as possible over time. But as they say, a long tail is easily stepped on, right? As we continued pouring out our holdings, the exchange rate started moving in one direction. The fact that we were conducting FX margin trading with borrowed money spread throughout the financial industry. When the exchange rate moved excessively, we had to devise a different strategy. Fortunately, this issue was automatically resolved by the market. As the pound became undervalued and the yen overvalued, financial companies including hedge funds, who had been watching cautiously all along, sprang into action. Watch these guys. They sided with the government. In other words, they bought pounds from the British government and sold yen to the Japanese government. In a typical situation, our defeat was almost certain at this point. The ammunition we had prepared was only $100 billion. Even that was dispersed due to fighting the war in both foreign exchange markets. Considering that George Soros had poured out $1 trillion when he fleeced Britain, this level of capital was simply not enough. Taikyu said, "Isn't this a bad situation?" I shook my head. No. It's the opposite. London Foreign Exchange Market. Foreign exchange dealers moved their hands busily to process the surging orders. As the pound's value declined due to continued selling, the government responded by releasing foreign reserves, and other financial institutions that predicted a rise in the pound also joined the buying frenzy. However, as the pound began to rise again, massive selling orders poured out as if they had been waiting. Josh muttered as he watched the constantly changing exchange rates. Are they planning to keep shorting as long as there's demand for selling orders? This kind of speculative trading is now avoided even by hedge funds. The decreased likelihood of success, coupled with the unbearable risk of failure, is the reason for this. Didn't even the great George Soros retreat after suffering astronomical losses in the Russian market? Do you really think Brexit will happen? The UK Treasury warned that if the UK withdrew from the EU, the pound's value could drop by more than 10%. However, until just before the vote, the Remain camp remained dominant, and the stable trends in the foreign exchange and stock markets indicated that outcome. Brexit does not happen. Josh chuckled. These otaku guys will probably go bankrupt. After finishing class and on my way out, I received a call from Hong Kong. Nice to hear from you, Mr. Kong. This is Chase Southwell, whom you greeted before. The CEO of Golden Gate Asia called me. For a moment I was so surprised I wondered if I heard it wrong. Oh, hello. It's been a while. Yes. Have you been well? We exchanged pleasantries as if we were close. There must be no reason for him to call me out of the blue. After a while he got straight to the point. There seemed to be a lot of NBSP, OTK companies' activities in the foreign exchange market. I chuckled. It seems rumors have spread widely. I consider Mr. Kong a great investor. But I don't understand why you're making such reckless investments. Stop now. It's not too late. OTK company was facing huge losses in both foreign exchange markets. Liquidating now would cost billions. This is not from a partner but from your friend. The legendary Asian investor Chase Southwell called me a friend. Kong Jin, who has truly come a long way. I smiled inwardly, thinking so. Thank you for your concern. Well, as a friend, let me say one thing. What is it? I intend to see this through. So please never stand on the opposite side of me. You'll understand the reason when the results come out. Might sound absurd. Perhaps it could be seen as arrogance out of unwillingness to admit defeat. However, I was sincere. At least I didn't want Golden Gate to suffer losses. After a while, Chase's voice was heard. Wishing you good luck. S12/N. The European Exchange Rate Mechanism (ERM) was introduced to reduce exchange rate variability and achieve monetary stability in Europe. It was part of the European Monetary System (EMS) and aimed to prepare European countries for the adoption of a single currency, the euro. How ERM works. Central rate. Each participating country's currency had a central exchange rate against the European Currency Unit (ECU), which was a weighted average of the participating currencies. Fluctuation bands. Currencies were allowed to fluctuate within a set margin around the central rate. Initially, this margin was plus or minus 2.25%, but some currencies had wider bands. Intervention. Central banks intervened in the forex market to maintain their currency within the agreed bands by buying or selling their currency. Example. Let's consider the British pound (GBP) in the ERM. Central rate. Suppose the central rate was set at 1 ECU equals 70 pence. Fluctuation band. With a plus or minus 2.25% band, the GBP could fluctuate between 0.68425 and 0.71575 per ECU. Intervention. If the GBP approached the upper limit, 0.71575, the Bank of England would sell GBP and buy foreign currencies to bring it back within the band. GBP reaches the upper limit because the demand is high, so the Bank of England sells GBP to fulfill the demand and stabilize the fluctuation. In the finance field, the most basic thing you have to understand to the concept of demand and amp. Supply, because they will decide the value. For example, the demand for gold is high but supply is less, so the gold price is high, but if the market is flooded with gold then it will fall. Real-world example equals in GT. George Soros is famously known for his role in the 1992 currency crisis, often referred to as Black Wednesday. To summarize equals. He short the British pound and made $1 billion. By now you should already know what short and long mean, as I'm trying to explain all the financial concepts as they come, and NBSP. Here's a summary of how he managed to break the Bank of England. Background. In 1990, the UK joined the European Exchange Rate Mechanism (ERM), which aimed to stabilize exchange rates by tying them to the German mark. However, the UK economy was weaker compared to Germany's, leading to high interest rates and economic strain. Soros strategy. Soros believed that the pound was overvalued and that the UK would eventually have to devalue it or withdraw from the ERM. He began shorting the pound, which means he borrowed pounds and sold them, planning to buy them back at a lower price later. Market pressure. On September 15, 1992, Soros and other speculators aggressively sold pounds, causing its value to plummet. The Bank of England tried to defend the currency by buying pounds and raising interest rates, but these measures failed to stabilize the currency. On September 16, 1992, the UK government withdrew the pound from the ERM and devalued it. This led to a significant drop in the pound's value, and Soros made an estimated $1 billion profit from his short positions. OTK Company was pouring money into the foreign exchange market, while Sanjiop, a senior at K Company, used the domestic startup stake held by K Company as collateral to raise money from various sources. In this way, the accumulated amount, combined with existing cash assets, totaled 1.1 trillion KRW. Before the upcoming Brexit referendum, Sanjiop used this money to buy put options on global stock markets. If the UK were to exit the EU, it might have uncertain long-term implications, but it would undoubtedly shock the entire financial market in the short term. Such a scenario was unexpected to some extent, and as it was considered unlikely, the impact would be even greater. World stock markets would likely crash simultaneously. Sanjiop said to me, "I thought borrowing money from a loan company to bet on CL Electronics call options was the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. But compared to what I'm doing now, that was nothing. Betting over 1 trillion KRW on derivatives. Even though I tried to foresee the outcome, I too felt a sense of dread. It felt like being in a narrow space with water rising up to my waist. Let's hope for the best. If successful, the potential profits would be immense. But if it failed, it would be the end." With a historic vote approaching, the atmosphere in the UK was tense. On TV, advocates for both leave and remain would present their arguments, dividing the nation. Some warned of economic uncertainty if they left, while others believed leaving was the key to economic revival. Provocation and slander spread, and European Union flags and Union Jacks fluttered in the streets. The UK, ranking 5th globally in terms of economy and a pillar of the EU alongside Germany and France, held immense influence not only in the Commonwealth but also globally. Therefore, Brexit wasn't just a matter between the UK and the EU, it was a worldwide event. Financial institutions closely monitored the voting results and the subsequent impact it would have. As the voting day approached, the financial markets became busier. The markets, including the foreign exchange, stock and derivatives markets, were overflowing with investors and speculators. Most investors predicted the UK to remain and invest in stocks for price increases and currency depreciation. However, the world's largest investment bank, Golden Gate, remained observant. Instead, they disposed of some of their physical stocks and call options. This was a decision made by the UK branch manager, Ted Brooks. Not long ago, he received a call from the Asia branch. I may be overly concerned, but I have a feeling that there could be an unexpected outcome to Brexit. It might be best to wait and see after the voting results. All right. Ted deeply respected Chase Southwell and believed there must be a good reason behind his judgment. As the world's attention focused on the UK, the day of destiny finally arrived. At 7 a.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Korean time, the referendum asking for Brexit approval began. This national referendum took place throughout the UK. Residents in England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Gibraltar gathered at polling stations to cast their votes. The voting process was broadcast in real time through BBC, CNN and domestic news channels. I stayed up all night watching the voting progress with Taekyu. The voting ended at 6 a.m. Korean time, 10 p.m. UK time. Following the closure of the voting, the opinion poll results that had been banned for several days flooded in. Taekyu was bewildered. The Remain side is significantly ahead. You can't trust opinion polls. The real outcome will only be known by checking the ballot boxes. Although those were his words, I too was internally shocked. While I had expected the Remain side to be in the lead, the difference ranged from 5% to 10%. Even accounting for the margin of error, it seemed almost certain that the Remain side had solidified their position. Can there be a turnaround? The vote count began immediately. If there is a significant difference in votes, we should get the results quickly, but if it's a close race, the conclusion may not come until the afternoon. As I watched the election broadcast, I packed my bag. Where are you going? I have to go to school. I have morning classes. Taekyu looked puzzled. You're going to school on such an important day? It's not like my presence will change anything. Voting is over and the results are in. The vote count is just a process of confirming that. Actually, missing a day of school wouldn't matter much. But sitting idle at home was making me anxious. It's better to go to school. Will you keep watching? Of course. This is a matter of life and death. After hearing this, it dawned on me how real it was to risk everything in another country's referendum. Let's talk later. As I was leaving the house, Taekyu grabbed my arm. Promise me one thing before you go. What is it? Taekyu looked at me seriously. If you lose everything and end up in the underworld working, promise to buy me a can of beer on payday. What are you talking about? Just promise me quickly. I nodded my head in annoyance. Okay, I promise. Taekyu nodded. No, come to think of it, one can won't do. Buy 2 cans. I'll buy 2 cans. It seemed like Taekyu liked my answer as he nodded. Okay. I got in the car and headed to school. Despite the Brexit vote overnight, the world remained the same. The roads were still congested with cars, and people in suits hurried their steps to avoid being late. Well, not everyone is interested in the affairs of another country. If I were just a regular university student, I would have been more concerned about the upcoming final exams and reports to submit rather than the UK's EU withdrawal. As the car passed through the school gates, I caught a glimpse of Yuri. I rolled down the window and said, Yuri, come in. Oops. Jinhu Sunbae. Yuri quickly got into the passenger seat. Leaning back, she let out a long yawn. Are you sleepy? At my question, Yuri nodded. I hardly slept last night. Why? There was the Brexit vote. I was planning to watch a bit and then sleep, but when I came to my senses, it was morning. I see. I was in the same boat, having hardly slept a wink. I met Sienna on the way to the business administration building after parking. She was with her boyfriend. Sienna greeted me with a smile. Hi. It looks like you two came together. Yuri replied with a smile. Yes. I came with Junho Sr.'s car. Rumors about my Porsche Panamera purchase had already spread. Sienna seemed curious about it but didn't ask anything. Go Junhyung pretended to know me when he saw me. Long time no see. I nodded in greeting. Hello, senior. Go Junhyung seemed to remember something. I heard you're close with the CEO of K Company. Can you pass on a message for me? What message? My father wants to meet him once. Tell him to visit the company sometime. His father is the president of GH Construction Company, a subsidiary of the GH Group. It's impressive that a big company president wants to meet him. Our Sanjiop Sr. is doing well. I'll talk to him about it next time we meet. After today, Sanjiop Sr.'s position will likely change. He may become someone unreachable even if a conglomerate company president wants to meet him, or he may no longer need to meet with someone who requests it. I may be in a similar position. As we were talking, students from the Business Administration Department approached us. Do you know that the Brexit voting results will be out today? The economic students are betting on it. Would you like to join? You can bet from 10,000 to 50,000 won. Currently, the Remain side is leading by 7-3. It seems like the betting isn't over yet. I took out a 50,000 won bill and handed it to the supervisor. I'll bet on the withdrawal side. Yes. I've received 50,000 won. The supervisor took the money, checked my name and the amount in the ledger. Watching this, Go Junhyung pulled out his wallet. This should be fun. I'll bet on the remaining side. Okay, senior. The supervisor asked Yuri. What about you, Yuri? I'll bet on the withdrawal side following senior Jinhu. Are you okay with the majority favoring remaining? Upon my question, Yuri looked at me and winked. Seniors are usually good at predicting these things. I muttered my inner thoughts. This time we really need to do as predicted. As soon as the employees of K Company arrived at work, they gathered in the meeting room. The CEO Park Sang-yeep had stayed up all night at the office. He continued to hold his position without even freshening up. On one side of the meeting room, 2 TVs were set up, broadcasting CNN and BBC. The voting results were broadcast in real time. Contrary to the expectation of a significant lead for the remaining side, the competition was intense. However, the fact that the remaining side was in the lead remained unchanged. In the early stages of vote counting, although the gap that was over 5% has slightly decreased, even as the voter turnout exceeded 50%, the Remain side remained dominant with a 52-48 lead. With easing concerns over Brexit, a sense of relief spread across the global economy. Asian markets rose together and exchange rates stabilized. The value of the put options purchased by K Company in the Asian markets hit rock bottom. Billions were wiped out in an instant. The upcoming situations in the European and American markets were also predictable. Everyone maintained silence without speaking a word. Park Sang-yeop continued to watch the TV with a vacant expression. Young Ji-hong said to him, Say Senior Sang-yeop, what should we do about this? Are we going to ruin everything like this? Please say something. Senior. He was so flustered that he even forgot that they should address him as a representative in the company. However, no one pointed that out. After a moment, regaining his composure, Park Sang-yeop said as if sighing, I'll make a quick call and come back. Is the future predetermined or can it be changed? This was my biggest concern. The fear that due to our actions, voters who wanted to leave might turn towards remaining. To avoid such a situation, instead of dumping the stocks in a short period, we moved cautiously over a month. Of course, everyone seemed to have grasped what we were up to. Fortunately, the fierce confrontation between the two camps continued, and the financial market issues took a back seat. Thanks to government and financial institutions' interventions, the exchange rate remained stable, and no one paid attention to the foreign exchange market. I don't even know how much time has passed. Under the current circumstances, I couldn't focus on the lecture. The last time I checked, the voter turnout had exceeded 30%, with a 4% lead in favor of remaining. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, the remaining side was dominant, while in Wales the Leave side had a slight edge. The key lies in England. The number of voters in England outweighs all other regions combined. Therefore, depending on the voting difference in England, the decision between remaining or leaving will be made. Yuri spoke softly. Senior, I think you've been getting calls since earlier. Oh. It was then that I realized my phone was vibrating in my pocket. Even though I was in the middle of a class, I got up from my seat in a hurry. Professor Kim Young-jun asked with a surprised expression, "What's the matter?" "I'll take the call and be back." I stepped out into the hallway and pressed the call button. I heard the voice of Hyunju Nuna. "Are you watching the polling situation?" "Yes." Even though the voter turnout has surpassed half, the remaining side is still leading with 52 to 48. Everyone seemed confident in the remaining side. The global economy breathed a sigh of relief. The stock market rose, the value of the pound went up and the yen went down. I couldn't gauge how much the losses would be. How much could OTK Company recover from the money poured into the foreign exchange market, and how much could K Company recover from buying put options? Money that I had not even touched, money that existed only as numbers in my accounts, slipped through my fingers like sand. It was hard to keep a clear mind. It felt like water was rising up to my nostrils. Had I made a mistake? Had I misjudged something? Had I done something wrong? What had I missed exactly? I asked Hyunju Nuna. How much is the remaining amount now? $3.2 billion. To prepare for margin calls exceeding expectations due to exchange rate fluctuations and for the worst-case scenario where forecasts go wrong, I had retained 30% of the funds. It was a moment to make a decision. Whether to use up all the remaining ammunition now or save it for the next battle. Hyunju Nuna said calmly. Jinhu, it's enough at this point. Let's stop now. If we withdraw, we can salvage a few companies including Keros and Facete. If nothing happened even after using up all the remaining ammunition, it would be over. OTK Company and K Company would lose everything and go bankrupt. The moment I opened my mouth, a hologram appeared in front of me. It was exactly the same as what I had seen 3 months ago. Even though the vote had ended, the future had not changed. The UK was going to leave the EU. Jinhu, are you listening? Yes. I'm listening. With a firm resolve, I gave the final instruction. Sell all the remaining amount of funds with 50 times leverage on the pound. Hyunju seemed puzzled as she asked. What? I didn't hear. Sell pounds with 50 times leverage right away. For now, calm down and... I shouted at Hyunju. Just do as you're told. After shouting, even I was startled. Trying to calm my excitement, I said, Sis, I must seem crazy, right? It's natural to think that way. But right now I'm completely fine. No, I've never been clearer in my mind than now. I know it sounds insane, but one thing is certain. Brexit is going to happen. Time is running out. It took a while before I heard a response. Just spoke with Taekyu, he said to follow your instructions only. The fact that he trusts me in such a situation. Hyunju let out a sigh and said, I'll do as instructed. The call ended. The hologram that was in front of me disappeared. I couldn't tell if what I just saw was a vision or just a delusion. Nothing else was visible. Golden Gate's Asia branch. Amidst everyone processing work frantically, whenever a bit of time was available, they glanced at the TV. The screens of CNN and BBC were shown in various places around the office. Though the sound was muted due to work hours, just by looking at the screens, one could understand how the vote count was progressing. For once, some feared a sudden change could occur, but nothing happened. Asian markets, including China and Hong Kong, rose together, easing the worries of fund managers. Analysts reported that Brexit concerns had eased and forecasted a period of relief in the global economy. Ellie asked Hyunju, what does Jinhu say? Hyunju shook her head. I plan to see it through till the end. What do you mean? Why? Ellie was taken aback. Hyunju took out a bottle of vodka from under the desk and poured a glass full, then gulped it down at once. Ellie looked at Hyunju with a perplexed expression. Hyunju's determination was clear. Drinking during work hours was never a norm unless work was finished. Why are you doing this? Ellie asked. Because I'm about to do something irrational from now on, replied Hyunju. Following the CEO's instructions, Hyunju placed the order. The $3.2 billion held by OTK Company until the end was poured into the foreign exchange market, turning into $15 billion. Ellie was amazed at what she had done. What have you done? She asked. Jinhu said to do it this way. Unable to remain composed, she too was in the same state of mind. Ellie grabbed the bottle of vodka and drank it down in big gulps. Ding. A text message confirming that the order had been placed arrived. It was truly over now. There was nothing more I could do. All that was left was to wait for the outcome. Once again my phone rang. I reluctantly answered the call. Yes, Senior, I said. Senior Sangyip urgently spoke. The situation is not good, Jin. The Asian market is practically done. Stop for now and salvage whatever money is left for the next opportunity. It's already too late. What? I just poured it all into the foreign exchange market. Senior Sangyip seemed at a loss for words. I muttered, buy cheap, bet your life on selling high. These were the words of Korkawa Jinjo, known as the god of Japanese stocks. Buying cheap and selling high is the principle of investing. Even without a guarantee of selling high, if you buy low, there won't be any more losses because the price won't drop further. Therefore, buying as cheaply as possible is crucial. However, being cheap means facing rejection from everyone, and choosing to buy implies thinking differently from others. In other words, you have to stand alone against the world. Just think of it as dying. Did you start without preparing for that? Anyone can analyze or predict, but courage is needed to pull the trigger. Even if things go wrong, you don't actually lose your life. You just lose all your money. If we fail this time, let's start over from the beginning. After a moment, Senior Sangyip said with a trembling voice, if I come to you like that time, will you accept me again? No. I forced a smile as I replied, I'll succeed quickly and come to you first, Senior. Thank you, Jinho. Click. The call ended. I tried to appear calm, but I was truly terrified. Losing all my money was a level of fear that made me think it would be better to die instead. My hand holding the phone was trembling. The water that had been under my nose had risen to the top of my head. Britain was truly engulfed in excitement. The pro-EU and pro-Brexit camps poured into the streets and squares. From the beginning of the vote count to well past the halfway mark, the Remain side was dominating. The Remain camp declared victory. The flag of the European Union fluttered, and the pro-Brexit voters bowed their heads. Even immigrants in janitor or laborer attire raised their arms and cheered alongside British voters. Europe is one. Europe is one. London Foreign Exchange. Attacking the foreign exchange market meant fighting against that country's government. The British government didn't need to intervene directly against the pound sellers. Many hedge funds and financial companies had joined as allies. Instead, they showered bullets on the enemy. The British government only needed to observe and command the fight from behind. With concerns about Brexit fading, buy orders kept coming in and the pound gradually rose. Senior dealer David shouted, sell orders are pouring in. What? Although briefly shocked by the strong selling pressure, the pound did not turn back down. This was because hedge funds and financial companies absorbed all the selling volume pouring in. Josh confirmed it was OTK companies doing. Once the accumulated orders were processed, there were no more sell orders. Was this their final stand? As Josh predicted, at this point OTK company had exhausted all its ammunition. They were essentially standing bare in the midst of enemy lines. If someone pulled the trigger, causing the pound to move slightly higher, OTK company would bleed and die right there. Josh sneered. Those otaku guys are heading for bankruptcy. Even if they now liquidated their positions, they would already have incurred astronomical losses. They dared to pick a fight with the UK without fear, but it ended disgracefully. I sat down in the hallway lost in thought. What was it that I had seen? Is it withdrawal or staying? Approval or rejection? What is the truth and what is the lie? Did I make the right choice or the wrong one? What have I done to the world? I couldn't breathe. I couldn't bring myself to face the results. I wish time would just stop right there. Ring. My phone rang. It was Taikyu. With trembling hands I pressed the call button. Speak. Instead of words I heard sobbing. Sob. Are you there? Sobbing. Taikyu cried for a long time and I listened to his weeping without saying a word. Sobbing. Jinhu, what do we do now? Sobbing. Is this the end? Is everything over? At that moment someone appeared in front of me. When I looked up, Sina was standing there. She looked down at me and asked, "What are you doing here?" I didn't know what I was doing here either. As if something had occurred to her, Sina said, "You won." Win? I asked. "You made a bet with the guys earlier." Sina calmly said, "The voting results just flipped. The UK has withdrawn from the EU." What? Taikyu's shout came through the phone. We did it, Jinho. The UK has withdrawn. Sobbing. As I came to my senses, the water that had risen above my head had completely drained away, leaving nothing. London Foreign Exchange. At one moment buying stopped and selling ceased as well. No one moved. It could only be described as a revolution. Suddenly, a different current flowed and the keen observers sensed the anomaly first. And it quickly spread throughout. At that moment the pound's selling pressure surged like a tidal wave. Josh was astounded. Could it be that there's still capital left? Unbeknownst to him, it was no longer OTK company flooding the market. Without anyone prompting them, financial companies turned the barrels they had aimed at OTK company toward the UK and started firing. The forces that had been buying pounds suddenly turned to selling, causing the pound, which had been rising gently, to plummet in an instant. 0.68 pounds has been breached. In the blink of an eye, the exchange rate that had been trading at 0.65 pounds to the dollar rose to 0.68 pounds. That was just the beginning. 0.70 pounds. 0.72 pounds. 0.75 pounds. Shouts erupted from all directions. Foreign exchange dealers were at a loss watching the plunging pound. Why did this happen? Why did the situation suddenly change? What on earth has happened? Josh's gaze fixed on the TV screen. It was only then that he realized the reason. The graph that had just indicated 52 remain, 48 leave had suddenly changed to 50-50. No, 49.9 to 50.1. Those who were allies just a moment ago had turned into enemies. Financial companies that had been buying pounds until just before slashed their losses by pouring the pounds they bought back into the market in full force. Sell-offs led to more sell-offs and the pound plummeted. This is unbelievable. Am I dreaming right now? The pound was falling like a waterfall. It was not a currency of a developing country but a quasi-reserve currency. The pound showing such a drastic change is unprecedented. Did OTK company know this would happen? Is that why they poured their final shares at the last moment? Josh recalled a nightmare from the past. A single investor destroyed the UK, the worst event that bankrupted the central bank. George Soros. Josh couldn't hold back any longer and shouted, "Stop selling, you bastards." The UK Treasury's prediction that the pound would depreciate by 10% within 2 years if Brexit occurred turned out to be completely off the mark. It didn't even take a few hours for the pound to drop by 20%. That day the pound recorded its largest decline in history. The vote counting in other regions had already concluded. Scotland leaned towards Remain, and Northern Ireland and Wales slightly favoured Remain and Leave respectively. However, the results in England were still pending. Due to the largest number of voters, the counting in England continued until the early morning. In the latter part of the count, only English votes were practically tallied. The graph, which initially leaned towards Remain at 52 to 48, gradually shifted towards Leave as more votes were counted. The surge in Leave votes in England led to this shift opposite to the initial trend. As the global stock market started a synchronized plummet, witnessing falling prices left everyone in shock. Investors rushed to sell risky assets and seek refuge in safe havens, causing unexpected repercussions. Prime Minister Okazaki was in a meeting with business leaders when his secretary hurriedly approached and whispered, "A crisis has occurred. Brexit has happened." Okazaki's expression hardened. Is this true? Just this news was alarming enough, but what followed was even more astonishing. The yen is surging. It broke 100 yen to the dollar. What? The exchange rate, which was 110 yen to a dollar, plummeted to 99 yen. The yen intervention was a crucial policy of the current government. They had tirelessly depreciated the yen by unlimited bond purchases, only to see it revert suddenly in a single moment. This is insane. With such a sharp depreciation in the exchange rate, it was evident that export companies would face severe repercussions. Okazaki realized it was no time for leisure. He swiftly rose from his seat. "Call an emergency cabinet meeting immediately." Sienna asked me with a worried expression, "What's wrong? What's going on?" "What's going on?" I replied. Disappointment overwhelmed me more than joy. What was I so afraid of? It was nothing really. "Thanks for telling me," I said. I walked past Sienna and headed outside. The campus was bathed in strong sunlight. My phone had been ringing like crazy. Take you, Ellie Senior Sang Yeep and others. Instead of answering the calls, I turned off my phone. How much did I really earn? I would have to liquidate my positions to find out, but I must have made billions of dollars even if I held back. It was like I had completely stripped the world financial market. After standing still for a while, I found a payphone in the corner and entered it. Then I picked up the receiver and made a call somewhere. Hello. It's me. Jinhu. Why did you call me on this phone? I hope you're doing well. I am. I hope you're doing well too. I felt like tears would come streaming down the moment I heard her voice. Why? What's wrong with our son? Holding back my bursting sobs, I said, I just called because I missed you. At the moment the election results flipped. Cheers from the Brexit-supporting voters echoed through the streets and squares. Wow. Boris Kane, seen as the leader of the Leave camp and former mayor of London, shouted at his supporters. The UK has gained independence from the EU and reclaimed sovereignty. It's now the era of a united and strong UK. Hurrah for Great Britain. The UK is united. The Union Jack fluttered. The Remain camp voters who were cheering moments ago now hung their heads in disappointment. Someone muttered weakly, "What on earth have we done?" Across global financial markets, screams and cries erupted. Analysts who had just been pouring out reports on EU integration and Andrea Lantry quickly switched gears to write reports on the economic shock and bleak prospects brought about by Brexit. The moment the election results changed was around 5 a.m. local time, around 2 p.m. Korean time. As the news spread before closing, the steadily rising Asian markets spiraled downwards. Everywhere from Korea, Japan, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., there was a sea of red in the markets. Financial firms who had placed long positions solely trusting in the UK staying in the EU sounded alarms. Korean securities firms also moved swiftly, checking market conditions and losses. However, a small investment company in Yeoksamdong felt differently. Just a few minutes ago, Young Ji-hong thought the company was finished. He was thinking about being unemployed from tomorrow and how to tell his parents. This only happened because of his senior in the club. No, the CEO who had gone mad. Otherwise, there was no way they would have completely emptied the company funds to buy put options in the global markets. However, that was a misconception. Unlike his foolish self, the CEO was actually looking several moves ahead. Sir, did you anticipate this would happen? That was indeed a true misconception. The CEO had no idea this would happen. He thought it was a disaster just like everyone else did. He had cried his heart out in the bathroom after speaking with the CEO of the parent company and returned with puffy eyes as evidence. But now the situation has changed. Park Sang-yeep jumped up and shouted, "Wow." In response, all the employees also stood up and cheered. Ha ha ha. This is incredible. The stock market plummeted, but the put options skyrocketed. The same situation would unfold in the upcoming European and American markets. It was truly a global sweep of money in the stock markets. Of course, the financial companies in each country that issued the options would incur losses proportional to what they earned. But who cared? If they didn't like it, they shouldn't have issued those options in the first place. The employees embraced each other and cheered. Park Sang-yeep turned his head and said, "Manager Young." Young Jae-hong promptly replied, "Yes, sir." Immediately contact the real estate agents and check if there are any buildings for sale on Tehran Street. Although similar jokes had been made frequently in the past, this time it wasn't a joke. He had bet a whopping 1.1 trillion won on the put options. How much profit can I make eventually? Even if I don't know, it would be enough to buy dozens of buildings in the Tehran area. Park Sang-yeep looked at the financial company buildings visible through the window and was convinced. With today's events, his name would be recorded in the history of the Korean financial industry. And names like Kang Jin-hoo and Oh Taek-yu will be recorded in the history of the global financial industry. He couldn't contain the overwhelming joy. Is this what it feels like to be so happy that you might go crazy? Park Sang-yeep shouted at the top of his lungs. All the financial companies in South Korea, go out. We won. We are the best in Korea. Golden Gate Asia office. Everyone looked in astonishment at one spot with work halted. Live coverage of the BBC's election results was playing on the TV. Could someone turn up the volume a bit? Since Hong Kong was once under British rule, there were several British employees at the Asia office. They were speechless watching the election results. Most British professionals in the finance sector had hoped for the UK to remain in the EU. However, what? What is this? This is unbelievable. Amidst the shocked atmosphere, only one woman cheered with open arms. Jessica. Did you see it? Jean, who did it? Unlike Ellie, who was jumping with joy, Hyunju had no strength left to even move a finger. The effects of the alcohol she had earlier were kicking in, making her face flush, head spinning. Hyunju took off her glasses and leaned back in her chair. I can't live up to my reputation because of these guys. Within a day it felt like 10 years had passed, as if she had aged. She had a strong premonition that she wouldn't live long regardless of money or anything else. What are you doing? Contact Jean Hu quickly. I don't even have the energy to dial the number. Ellie said excitedly. Then can I do it? Go ahead. Hyunju closed her eyes, wishing she could fall asleep that way. It was 7 in the morning local time, 4 in the afternoon in Korea. The chairman of the UK Election Commission declared the Brexit vote passed with a 49.1 to 50.9 majority. With a mere 1.8% difference, not even reaching 1 million votes, the fate of the UK and the EU was sealed. The aftermath was tumultuous as no one had anticipated such an outcome. Asian stock markets that had been rising plummeted, followed by a cascade of crashes in European and American markets. The pound fell by 20%, while safe assets like the yen and gold rose by over 10%. Surprised Britons tried to exchange their pounds for euros or dollars, but exchange offices in the UK closed down and withdrawals from overseas accounts were halted. Ironically, the most bewildered by the result were the British themselves. The government that called for the referendum, politicians on both sides, and even both voters and non-voters couldn't have foreseen such a situation unfolding. As the day broke, Prime Minister David Holt took responsibility for the outcome and announced his resignation. The power shifted to the pro-Brexit politicians, who suddenly changed their stance. It turned out that the hefty EU contribution paid by the UK was returning as financial support, unbeknownst to those who supported Brexit. Wales, for example, faced an immediate crisis with the imminent halt of support funds from the EU. Once you withdraw, it was also a lie to say that you could send immigrants away and create jobs for British people. To engage with the EU single market and trade, one must comply with EU regulations. In other words, the movement of physical and human resources could not have been stopped from the beginning unless economic ties with the EU were severed. As criticisms mounted, Boris Kane, the former mayor of London leading the withdrawal camp, quietly announced he would not run in the general election, shifting blame elsewhere. Once again, it was reaffirmed that one should not believe politicians' words regardless of their promises. Realizing they had been deceived, citizens took to the streets shouting for the invalidation of the vote and demanding a re-vote, but it was already too late as the voting had concluded. Subsequently, the international situation turned unfavorably for the UK. In Scotland, where the Remain camp was dominant, calls for independence from the UK and rejoining the EU emerged, while London also strongly opposed the decision. Contrary to expectations that Brexit could trigger a split within the EU, member states rallied even stronger after observing the UK's situation. Rather than the expected breakup of the European Union due to Brexit, EU member countries closely watched the UK's predicament and unified further. German and French leaders joined hands, urging a unified Europe and pressuring the UK to trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. Despite the bold declarations of withdrawal previously, the UK discreetly stepped back, saying they would wait and see. Major financial institutions based in London hurried to move operations. Companies like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Cargo Group decided to relocate to Frankfurt, Germany, and Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Even British banks and private equity firms hastened preparations to leave London. Golden Gate also announced plans to move 1,000 of its London-based employees, out of the 5,000 total, handling intermediary duties, to its office in Germany. Financial company buildings in financial hubs like Wall Street lit up late into the night as employees monitored global stock, bond, and foreign exchange markets, busy finding strategies and predicting future trends. Similarly, the Golden Gate Asia office in Hong Kong remained illuminated throughout the night, with staff engrossed in work unable to contemplate leaving. Chase Southwell stood by the window of his home office, overlooking Victoria Harbour. He had witnessed and experienced much since coming to this place, admiring the beautiful Hong Kong skyline. Japan's real estate bubble collapse, China's growth, Hong Kong's return to China, the Asian financial crisis, the global financial crisis, and so on. This place was no different than his other hometown. Chase remembered the young Asian man he had met a few months ago. Until then, he had thought he could grow into a great investor in the future. I misjudged the person. The young man was already more than what he had imagined. Breaking everyone's suspicions and doubts, he moved forward for hope even in the most desperate situations. Even when everyone said no, the young man remained convinced. And in the final moment he did not retreat but poured out everything he had. It is unknown why he made such judgments and from where did he found such courage. However, in this world the process is not important. Only the result matters. OTK Company emerged victorious. It was truly a legendary victory that would be remembered in the financial industry. Before long, the young man's true identity would be known to the world. Is a new era opening? Today the realization that he had aged hit him. If only he were 20 years younger, he could have been active in the upcoming era with him. Chase now made a call to the young man who had become a legendary investor. Sincere congratulations, Mr. Kong. Thank you. I doubted until the end, but in the end you were right. It was just luck. Everyone has luck. But it's rare for someone to have the courage to hold on to it. I hope we can meet again soon. I feel the same. The short call ended. Next, Chase called his longtime friend and superior, James C. Goldman. I must establish a branch in Korea as quickly as possible. The financial market, which was in turmoil due to the bomb known as Brexit, quickly regained stability. Thanks to the strong determination of the Japanese government, the exchange rate, which had dropped to 99 yen to the dollar, rose to 104 yen, and the pound also temporarily rebounded successfully. In the meantime, we closed our positions and secured profits. Thanks to global stock markets falling like dominoes, K Company made 48 trillion won in the derivatives market, increasing its assets to 59 trillion won. OTK Company also settled its positions in the foreign exchange market. 30,170 million. After paying substantial trading fees and interest on FX margins and repaying the principal and interest borrowed from financial institutions, we were left with $30.17 billion, approximately 33 trillion won in Korean won, slightly less than 3 times the initial investment. Taekyu, trembling, asked after confirming the amount, "Is this for real?" I was speechless. FX margin trading is a zero-sum game. One's gain is another's loss. It was the result of the depleting foreign exchange reserves of the UK and Japan and the plundering of global financial companies. Was this too much even for us? Taekyu tapped my shoulder and said, "Congratulations." For what? Now you are the wealthiest person in South Korea. The current wealthiest person in South Korea, without a doubt, is Chairman Lim Il-kwon of Samsung Electronics, with an estimated fortune of roughly 20 trillion won, not taking into account any hidden funds. The current assets of OTK Company amount to 45 trillion won. Combined with K Company, it totals 51 trillion won. My stake accounts for almost 80%, which is around 40 trillion won. If my mother finds out, she might faint. The terms UK, Britain, and Great Britain are often used interchangeably, but they refer to different entities. United Kingdom UK. This is the full name of the country, officially known as the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It includes 4 countries: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Great Britain. This is a geographical term that refers to the largest island in the British Isles, which includes 3 countries: England, Scotland, and Wales. It does not include Northern Ireland. Britain. This term is often used informally to refer to either Great Britain or the UK as a whole. However, it is not an official designation. To summarize, England plus Scotland plus Wales plus Northern Ireland. Great Britain. England plus Scotland plus Wales. Britain. Informal term, can mean either Great Britain or the UK.